Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. The New York Knicks dominate the New Orleans Pelicans. Mikal Bridges drops 31. We'll talk about it now.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's up, guys? You are Locked On Knicks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. The Knicks, this was an easy one. This was a much needed easy one. Mikal Bridges made me eat my words from last episode, and I'm lucky enough to be joined by Ariel Pacheco to talk through all of it in just a sec. But first, I want to remind you that you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And I wanted to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today. And every day, remember, you can hit that subscribe button. If you are not already subscribed, you should be subscribed. But if you're not, hit that subscribe button, hit that notifications bell. And in the comments, tell me, are you confident this is what we're going to get going forward for Mikal Bridges? Because if so, I think it would change the trajectory of the Knicks season. But who's talking to you? I'm Gavin Schall. I am your Saturday Locked On NBA host, your daily Locked On Knicks host. No Alex Wolf today. Instead, it is my buddy Ariel. And we're going to get into it without much further ado. Super fun game. All right, guys, as promised, lucky enough to be joined by my good friend Ariel Pacheco after a dominant Knicks win that they needed. I think, Ariel, we probably needed maybe even a little bit more than they did. 118-85 over the New Orleans Pelicans. Last game in the little thumbnail I had broken bridges. We were going to put mended bridges in this one. A Knicks career high, 31 points. Amazing start to this game. 13 points, three threes, in the first quarter. 5 for 6 from the field. Just a picture-perfect game for him. A picture-perfect game for the Knicks in general. A 22-0 run to go up 25-4. Went nearly 9 minutes, only allowing a single point to the Pelicans. And I feel good. I pod after I came out ranting and raving. I'm calm as could be. I'll let you take it away. What went so right for Mikal Bridges in the Knicks tonight?
I think he was pretty aggressive. I think he had the first bucket of the game. I'm pretty sure they ran a set for him to get a look off, and he got to his patent little mid-range fadeaway that he's gotten so comfortable with. But I think that he just had the right mindset tonight. He was aggressive looking for his shot, and I thought he had a bunch of cuts from the wing that Jalen Brunson found him for some easy ones. And he's been money from the corners, but he made a couple from above the break from three tonight, which was really nice to see. I think I've been a little less concerned with his shooting than I think most people are. I just feel like like Tibbs has said, he has the body of work of him being a shooter. But I thought he was also kind of pretty good defensively tonight as well, which is what is my biggest concern when it came to Bridges, was just they kind of need him to be not just an average defender even. They need him to be legitimately good on that end. And I think tonight we kind of saw the vision, especially defensively, where I thought the Knicks as a whole were really connected.
Yeah, I think the same exact thing stood out to me. I wrote in my notes, probably the best point of attack defensive quarter he's had all season to start off this game on DeJounte Murray. And he's had other quarters. I think back more to the preseason. I don't know what happened with that. I think it was probably just that they were playing terrible teams all preseason, but he was just getting deflection after deflection, steal after steal. And he's had stretches in these games where he's been a force in terms of doing that. The point of attack stuff has pretty clearly been the most concerning, with Jamal Murray, who desperately needed to get right, going right at him in Denver, didn't have much better luck against Dallas. Last game against Charlotte, it was Micic crossing him up. It was Nick Smith Jr., who I think isn't even in their healthy rotation, bullying him to the rim and flipping in a shot. And I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was more confidence. I don't know if he was feeling better. This whole thing, because it to your point, it hasn't just been one thing. It has been the shooting, particularly from the wings. My biggest concerns probably is the utter lack of rim attempts. I think going into the Hornets game, 5th percentile in the NBA amongst wings, only 15% of his shots coming at the basket. And then the defense has just been nothing close to what we all expected from him. And to your point, that's maybe the area you need the most from him, particularly when OG Anunoby has been killing it on offense the way he has. And just from possession number one, like you said, on offense, he had a shot right away, had a deflection right away on defense, and just all game, like it felt like he was doing a much better job getting around screens, was attached to DeJounte Murray's hip. I think part of it, and we'll talk about this more next segment, was that the Knicks for the second straight game, or at least they closed the Hornets game this way, were using Karl-Anthony Towns at the level, which of course means like he doesn't have to chase as much, right? Like he just has to get over, and then they can kind of trap, and the rest of the Knicks can play in rotation. Maybe that's something they do a lot more of going forward. The shooting was fantastic. Like you just love the confidence. I really like that. The second corner three that he hit was off that like incredible OG Anunoby Daniel Tice block, and it's felt so many times this year like he has a chance to have a dagger of a three. Like when the Knicks are on a run, great defensive play, and over again you see Brunson, Hart, really everyone on the team trying to empower him and hit him in transition for a three off a big defensive play. And it feels like he had like a 2-game stretch where they're going in, but for the most part, it feels like they've gone in and out or they're just short every single time he made that three. I thought that was huge. Next possession, got one from the wing. A few plays later, like had the ball like a few feet short of the line and like danced back into a three off the dribble. I thought that was great. It was a night that he absolutely needed, and I'm hoping it's more of this going forward.
Yeah, he had a three as well I think it was the start of the fourth quarter where he hit like a movement three from above the break. And when he made that one, I was like, okay, yeah, he's really feeling it, because that's like a shot he has not been able to hit all season. But speaking to just him defensively, it's so crucial for him to be a lot better at the point of attack than he has been. I think back a lot to when Tibbs subbed out Fournier for Grimes in the starting lineup, and what having a good, competent point of attack defender did to the defense. I remember the first like 20, 25 games of that season, they really struggled defensively. And once Grimes was plugged into the starting lineup, you saw defensively how kind of things fell into place. And I think even now more than ever, with Towns being your rim protector in that starting lineup, you need your point of attack defender to limit as much dribble penetration as possible. And to this point, we haven't seen that, at least not consistently, from Bridges. So I think tonight was a step in the right direction when it comes to him. But yeah, again, like just to reiterate everything, like he's just been he was great tonight. And I think people have been hard on him because of the whole draft picks and stuff. But I think this is kind of what people expected. For him to just be a plus on defense, and for him to kind of knock down the open looks that are easier looks than he's had in his time in Brooklyn. So overall, it's a step in the right direction, and I think everybody wants to see it moving forward.
Yeah, and I think the final, I don't want to say the final step, is he could come out against Orlando, play terrible, and I could be back on here ranting and raving, and much to the chagrin of people in the comments section, bringing up those 5 picks seemingly every single episode. I'm sorry, I don't enjoy doing it. It just feels necessary when he has a bad game. Maybe people disagree, but if he can keep up the shooting and he can keep up the defense, the only other element is getting to the rim, and I have generally seen like just some level of like either like an inability to beat guys off the dribble, or just like unwilling to, like, I mean, that was the main thing we saw against the Hornets, right? Like he had that one play in transition where it was Misic and Saloon, I think, at the basket, and or Salon, I always forget his name. And he was just unwilling to shoot. And like I've seen a guy who like at times is afraid to get to the free throw line, doesn't tonight. Obviously you don't really care in a game where he shoots the basketball like this. I do think the shooting from 3 could carry over to maybe more confidence at the basket. I didn't love that, like, towards the end of the first half, like, got locked up a little bit by CJ McCollum. Obviously, the shot clock was a factor there. One play in the third quarter, tried to go at Misi and kind of settled for, like, a fadeaway 3. Did have a play in the fourth where I think it was Jemison, like, he blew by him, but, like, got fouled. So I would like, if we get, like, a half-court dunk from him, I'm going to lose my mind. If we even get, like, a blow-by for, like, an athletic layup, this is a guy who shot 72% at the rim 1 year in Phoenix. Like, we know it's in there. He's never going to be super high volume, but if he can start mixing that in, I think that's when you'll see the peak version of this Knicks offense. And most importantly, like the version of this Knicks offense they need to exceed against a defense like Orlando's, and not one like the Pelicans when they're missing 4 of their 5 or 4 of their top 6 players.
I was digging into some of like his like at the rim stuff. And a lot of his buckets at the rim where he's actually like finished have been off of like cuts or in transition, that kind of thing. But when like looking into it deeper, like he doesn't have a problem getting in the paint. it's that he's not going all the way to the rim. He keeps stopping short for that little turnaround fade away in the lane that I think it's great that he's been making it at the level and the rate that he has. But I do think that's probably going to come down at least a little bit. And I just think that he's kind of been very contact averse on both ends of the floor. Not only is he not getting to the free throw line on offense, but defensively, he's not even fouling guys, which is like, for the most part, it's a good thing. But I think it kind of speaks to like the level of like lack of aggression that he's playing with on defense, where he's not really getting into guys. Guys aren't really filling him on that end. And that's why I think that before tonight, for the most part, that guys have been able to kind of get wherever they want. And I that's the part that's been most concerning for me, is just how kind of contact averse he's been playing since he's played with the Knicks so far.
Yeah, I think it's a great call. I've seen a guy who frankly does not want to get to the free throw line. Like, he's actively avoided getting fouls. And to your point, him just incessantly pulling up from the mid range is a big part of that. He's just 8 for 13 from the line on the year. And I think that's where whatever like the hitch is in his form, if you believe in the hitch, some people don't believe in the hitch. If you believe in the hitch, that's where I've noticed it the most. I feel bad that we've maybe like complained about it in the last 3 minutes when he's coming off his best game. Like I say all that to say, like, and I said it last show, like it can all turn around in one game. And hopefully this carries over. Like I think it would go a long way with me, if I can speak for all Knicks fans, for him to do this again against Orlando. But it was a hell of a start. And to your point, like the cuts off Jalen drives, those layups count exactly the same as the self-created ones. So if Jalen can keep drawing 2 or 3 guys and he can keep timing that up, to your point, had 3, if not 4 of them tonight, that would be great for the Knicks. I want to get into the Knicks defense because it was pretty extraordinary in that game. In this game, we'll talk about it in just a sec here on Locked On Knicks. First, I want to remind you that this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. How do you stay cozy during the winter months? For some, wrapping up in a blanket with a mug of hot chocolate, that sounds great right now. Or watching a movie with a family is the best way to spend the month of December. Therapy is also a great way to bring yourself some comfort that never goes away, even when the season changes. I think the biggest lesson I've taken from something like a decade of therapy at this point is just the ability to let it go. No one thing matters too much. And just to acknowledge your emotion and let it pass through you. That's helped me a ton. If you're thinking about starting therapy, you can get BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. You can find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get started and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, so I said it before, the New York Knicks do not allow a single point from the 10:35 mark in the first quarter to the 1:54 mark in the first quarter. Again, the Pelicans, give them a round of applause. They certainly contributed to the ineptitude. They were missing some shots you should make, but I think my single biggest takeaway beyond Mikal in this one is that for as long as this game was competitive, which obviously was not very long, but let's call it the first quarter and a half, like it's maybe the first time, and you could say the Nuggets game, but I think there were some weak points there, that this team has made you feel them defensively, like from the opening minute and until it, again, stopped being a real basketball game, which was pretty early. You caveat it a million times, but the level of competition was not great. But I think everything we just said about Mikal applies to this whole team. Like Josh Hart getting a strip like on the first or second possession off of Trey Murphy's leg. Jalen Brunson, I think quietly has been very solid on that end of the floor. And I think maybe it was like the second or third play of the game, just the way they all were on a string. Like OG got beat, and then Hart made a rotation to the rim. Brunson then, like I forgot who was in the corner, but Brunson then flew out. It was to Javonte Green, and then he rotated over to DeJounte Murray on the right wing. Mikal recovered over there. Hart like X'd out from under the rim, back out to CJ McCollum left wing. One more pass to the corner. OG goes cross court, blocks it. Knicks get a run out. Like just like that level of connection has generally been missing. And it makes sense because that like playing that type of defense is something that requires a lot of time, a lot of chemistry. But I'm curious your thoughts on if you think like I should slow my roll and just say, all right, this was the Pelicans. Or like if this is a sign of things to come, and maybe they'll get more aggressive in how they defend the pick and roll if they know they can rotate like this on defense, which we saw like opening night against the Celtics. They were so far from this point.
Yeah, I think the word you used that I think that sums it up really well is just connectedness. They were really well connected, and I think on other nights, when there's been like a blown coverage, like I think there was a lot of like ways you could point and a lot of different players you could point the finger at. But I think tonight it was very clear like they were all on the same page. You mentioned the weak side rotations. The block by OG is a great example of OG stepping up right when I think Tice running towards the rim. And I think that the aggressive coverage, it kind of brings out the best in a lot of different guys because it forces you to be active and engaged. I think back a lot of like Julius Randle when in the very few moments where he played the 5, where he'd be in drop and he kind of would just like lollygag around and not put his hands up and contest shots. But then when they had him like trap the ball, you'd see him like moving his feet, showing like his capabilities with ground coverage. So I do think that playing an aggressive coverage like that, it kind of forces your defense to be aggressive and to be attentive. And usually in those moments when there is like a blown coverage, you can kind of see where it went wrong. It's pretty easy to figure out who missed the rotation and who should have been where. And moving forward, I do think that this is something that even if it isn't something that they do full time, I do think that having this in their back pocket to be able to like throw a team off their game for a quarter or a possession or two is very useful because I think at the height of where you want the Knicks to get to, if they want to be a championship contender, Eastern Conference Final contender, they're going to need to be able to switch up coverages and be able to mix and match. And I think that this is a good start. And I'm not the kind of person that's very much to kind of downplay the level of competition because I do think that at the end of the day, you still have to execute. And I think that today they did a good job of also like funneling shots towards their poorer shooters, the Pelicans' poorer shooters like Javonte Green, Antonio Reeves. He might be a good shooter, but he didn't shoot it well tonight. But just in general, like this is exactly what you want to see from the defense, even if it is against a team that's very depleted like the Pelicans are.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and I love what you said about individual responsibility because I think that's a lot of times what lit a fire under Julius. It was that I don't want to get embarrassed in my matchup. I'm okay, like maybe like not making a rotation or like having like a lackluster like help effort, and I don't feel the same for Cat. Like I've honestly not. There's been stuff I've questioned with him this year. His effort defensively, like, has never really been an issue for me. Like, I think it is genuinely just physical limitations with him at times. And like, there are nights where, for whatever reason, and look, there are nights like when I do a podcast and I'm like a little bit more lethargic, but there are nights where he just doesn't quite have the same energy. And I think now 3 of the last 4 games, like he was definitely juiced for that matchup with Jokic. Against the Hornets, I thought that was one of his better defensive games of the season. I thought this was one of his better defensive games of the season. And like his entire career, like he has been much better in aggressive coverages. Like that Minnesota defense the year before they got Gobert, or maybe 2 years before they got Gobert. I don't know. It was either 2021 or 21-22, where they were about as aggressive on that end of the floor as any NBA team has been the last 5 seasons. Where like flying around, trapping everything, like almost like a junk defense you would see in the 90s in college basketball. And that was the best that Cat has ever looked individually on defense, aside from like those primetime matchups against someone like Jokic, where he can just use his physicality, but he's so much better playing at the level. He is like shockingly fleet of foot for someone who like I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought, but I think it is very similar to Julius, where when he's going forward and when he's the initiator and the aggressor, like you see his athleticism that's on offense on display on defense. When he's in drop and he's going backwards, like I'm sure there's a biomechanical backing for this. He is just not nearly the same guy. But this was another like just really solid game from him. And I think his rim protection has been much better. Like that Jazz game, he was totally non-existent. Like you just saw over and over again, guys like Lowry Markkanen would go to the rim and they wouldn't. It was almost as if Cat was making it easier than if there was no one at the basket at all. And then the last 2 games, like he's made people feel him at the rim, like going straight up and down against Trey Murphy to alter his shot, force a miss early, like had another nice deflection at the end of the first quarter. His hands have been really good. He had a flying help block. I can't remember who it was on. It might've been on Murphy. It was on someone, but he's done really good when OG Anunoby can kind of eat guys up and then coming in and getting a swat. Like he is like, if he can give you this level of defense, and it is contingent on Mikal doing his job and OG doing his job at a high level. But like this is all the Knicks need from Karl-Anthony Towns. I think they can be a top half of the league defense. And with as good as their offense is, especially if Mikal shoots like this, that's kind of the point you're aiming for, right?
Yeah. And if he's grabbing 19 rebounds and he's helping to close out possessions, that also helps too. That's a big part of it as well. I think whenever he's had issues defensively, it's usually his positioning. He can sometimes be a little late to rotate over. And I think he's big enough that when he is in the right position and he is able to like set his feet and get a real good contest off, like I think he does bother guys. But the issue is just that happens a little less frequently than not. But I do think that what you said was really interesting about the biomechanical aspect of him stepping back. I hadn't thought of that, but it does make sense. And I think that he doesn't have to be, he never will be an elite rim protector, but if he can just clean up some baskets that are like, oh, Mikal got beat or OG got beat, if he can clean up one or two a game, like that matters. If he can just be in the right position, if he keeps grabbing boards as he has all season, not just tonight, but all season, that helps as well. Jokic is someone who isn't the best defender, but he does bring value to the defensive end because of his ability to close out defensive possessions with rebounds. So I do think that I've been a little impressed with Cat overall. I think it's kind of what I expected for the most part. Just in terms of like, I thought that his defensive reputation like has been kind of behind where he's actually has been for the past couple of seasons. In the beginning, he really did struggle defensively, but I think that over the past 3-4 seasons, playing more competitive basketball, having better talent around him, I think that he's kind of gotten to a space where he's at least neutral. And that's fine. That's good enough, I think, for this team.
The rebounding is a great point. I don't think ESPN's updated their stats yet. He's at 12.7 a game right now. If this was enough to push him over 13.1, he would be first in the NBA in total rebounds. And I also I should note 17 in the first half, which was tied for the most by a Knicks since 1996-97, which I believe is as far back as they track it. So that is incredibly impressive. And I think Jokic is the model. I don't think he is quite the IQ on that end of the floor that Jokic does, and that's not really an insult to Cap. I think at times he is quite a smart defender. It's just that Jokic is brilliant, and that is kind of the one thing outside of great hands that he is going for him on that end, like, or the mental stamina to just do it over and over and over again. And look, we've seen like coaches, like a number of them, great defensive coaches, including Tom Thibodeau, try to make it work with Cat for years, and it has been very hit or miss. He was like particularly highly rated the last 2 seasons, but that was guarding power forwards. It was not as a primary rim protector. So you have to see if he can do it every night. You have to see if he can do it against great teams. You have to see if like a hedging type of defense works against a team like the Celtics that isn't going to panic, right? And is going to like quickly spray it out of that double team, particularly if it's someone like Jason Tatum on the ball, who's 6'8" and can see over Mikal Bridges, even with those long arms, and like keep the ball moving around the arc. But if the Knicks rotate like this, like it is definitely an option. And to your point, like there is no one magic elixir, like people sometimes say, like especially early in the season. I'm sure I was guilty of it, like drop. Oh, they can never do drop with Cat. Like switching, like, oh, you can't switch that. Like that's terrible. The whole point is like when you're not the Boston Celtics or the Oklahoma City Thunder and you don't have perfect defensive personnel, you have to try a bunch of different schemes. And the Knicks just have to see what's working on a specific night against a specific opponent. And I think you have to give Tom Thibodeau a lot of credit, right? Because he at times has not been very variable in terms of what he wants to do. Tonight, this was absolutely perfect to stop the Pelicans.
Yeah, I think back a lot to the season the Bucks won the championship. Coach Bud, he ran a bunch of different coverages throughout the year after playing primarily drop the season before they won the championship. And that year, they spent the regular season, knowing they'd have a high seed regardless, kind of tinkering and fidgeting around with their defensive coverages. And in the playoffs, you kind of saw how valuable it was to be able to reliably go to different defenses and have your players know, okay, this is what is expected of me in this coverage. This is what it's needed out of me. And I think that that's something that Tibbs hasn't really done in the past. So it is interesting to see him kind of playing these more aggressive coverages more consistently. And one small point on the Jokic Cat little defensive comparison, I do think that the IQ is a good point. And also Jokic just has great hands in drop, and he does lead the league consistently in like kick balls because he kicks a lot of those like passes that he can't get to. And that's one thing that I think Cat kind of doesn't have the best of is active hands, especially in drop. He has his hands at his side a lot. And when he does put his hands out, he usually does get called for a lot of like fouls, a lot of ticky-tack fouls. So that's just one little subtle difference between those two.
Yeah, he's gotten a bunch of strips, but it's mostly on the ball. It's like very rarely like batting it out of the air. All right, we will wrap up on this game talking through a couple of other Knicks. I thought Jalen Brunson had some great stretches. OG Anunoby, 7 stocks in this one. That is crazy. Josh Hart continues to hit shot clock beating buzzer beaters. We'll tell you why he's one of the best in the league in that category. Some fun garbage minutes for a bunch of different guys. And then some quick thoughts on the Magic game. We'll get into that next on Locked On Knicks. All right, guys, we'll be back in just a sec. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats you live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com to join today. Once again, you get started with $150. It's $150 to spend on whatever you want in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, I'll leave it to you, man. You're the guest. Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby, Josh Hart. I'll throw Deuce McBride in there too because he was awesome again in this one. Who do you want to talk about next?
I want to start with OG, just because I think that he struggled offensively. I think the past 2 games or 3 games now. After that 40-point buckets against the Nuggets, and I think that I'm not really concerned about him offensively, but defensively he's just been so good. Like watching him every night, like defensively is literally like a pleasure. And I think that we're seeing him kind of be that kind of off-ball, like havoc creator. Like anytime teams think that they have an opening, you just see OG come up out of nowhere with his huge arms, and he's either grabbing steals, grabbing blocks. I think that watching him defensively, like he's definitely first team all defense level this season. And I do think that like it's really hard for non-bigs to win Defensive Player of the Year award. But if there was like a non-big Defensive Player of the Year award, I think OG would be right up there with anybody.
Yeah, he's been amazing. That block on who it was Tice, reminiscent of the one he had on Embiid. Was it? I think it was Game 6 that he had that. That was just incredible. Like rotating over, meeting him at the summit, like that was like I got chills almost because I don't know if you caught the highlight. I saw Hartenstein had essentially that same block the other night for the Thunder. And I got really, really sad. And I was like, oh, I kind of miss that version of the Knicks and OG. And to be fair, like the new guys, like we talked about Mikal, we talked about Towns. Like you got a little throwback to that. I'm hoping it becomes more night to night, more consistent. But a game after like just putting Brandon Miller like in Guantanamo and like throwing away the key, like he was again like just picture perfect on that end of the floor. Like even plays where he wasn't blocking shots, like great verticality on DeJounte Murray to force a miss, broke up a dribble handoff and took it coast to coast for a jam. Hopefully the shooting comes around. It should. Like he got off to such a hot start. Like even when we were singing his praises early in the week, we were saying there's probably some regression coming now, unless he missed one at the end of that 40-point game. I think it's 15 straight missed threes for him. So expect him to come out and shoot pretty well against Orlando, just 2 for 10 in this one. I think he'll bounce right back. The defense was amazing. Another guy who defended really well, Josh Hart, 12 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals in this one. I mentioned set the tone early with that strip on Trey Murphy. Continues to just be incredible at the end of the shot clock. I looked it up. Fun stat, the guys with the 4 best effective field goal percentages in the final 4 seconds of a shot clock were all in this game. It was Trey Murphy, CJ McCollum, Josh Hart, Karl-Anthony Towns, and Hart was second behind CJ McCollum in that stat, shooting 68.3% in terms of EFG, which takes into account free throws, threes, and of course 2-point shots. He's the only guy of not including the Pelicans guys in the top 3 to have played 10 games on the season. So if you want to say minimum 10 games, he would be the best at that. The guy who was 4th and has also played 10 games is Karl-Anthony Towns. So the Knicks, just an elite late shot clock team. He had a nasty, like off the dribble corner 3 in garbage time. And I guess we got to see it a little bit at the in the first 2 games of the Sixers series when the Knicks just had nothing else. But I almost wonder what Josh Hart, like I guess he's kind of played on bad teams in his career. But if he was just on like an all-time bad team and you said, hey, Josh, you're the number 1 option, like could he get to 20 a game? Because he just has these runs where he's forced to create and he's so reluctant to do it. But when he has to, because there's literally no time to pass the ball, he looks like I can't say that word. He looks like Kobe Bryant doing it. It's kind of crazy.
I remember he had like a 44 point, I think it was 44 with the Pelicans.
Yeah.
And that like at the end of a half season where they weren't great. But yeah, he's always been like, even last season when he was kind of forced to take on more of a creation role with all the injuries the Knicks had, like he can fill in that role reasonably well, a lot better than I thought he could. I think it's just his ability to consistently get downhill. He's so strong. He bumps people off their defenders off their spots. And like when he's aggressive looking for his jump shot is good. I feel like a lot of my concerns with his jump shot since he's been traded to the Knicks is just the hesitancy and the kind of like ripple effect it has on the offense when he's not looking for his jumper. But this season, there hasn't been a moment for the most part, maybe like one game or two, where I don't feel like he's been hesitant. I feel like he's played like how Josh Hart plays. Like it's very it's hard to describe how Josh Hart plays other than saying Josh Hart had like a Josh Hart game. And then I think most people would understand exactly what you mean.
I think it might be you can make a case for Jalen, but it's arguable he's been the most consistent Nick this year. Like there hasn't been, unless I'm just wiping it from my mind, like there hasn't been like one bad stretch. Mike Breen shouted out during the game, 72% from 2-point range this year coming into the game, could presumably went up in this one. He's been amazing for this team, and he's a big reason why they're 12-8. Jalen Brunson. I thought, even though statistically it was a pretty underwhelming game, I was really impressed with him. Like hit a pull up 28-footer around a town screen on his first shot of the game. I always say this with him, like on the nights he takes and makes those, like it's a game changer if he's hitting from that deep. And I think it'll help if Mikal can take on like a little bit of a shot creation burden. There's just a little bit less on Jalen. Like he'll have the legs to take that shot. Like I think as good as the Knicks offense has been, it'll open up even more. I think it's a shot. Like if the Knicks can get to the second round, if they can get to the Eastern Conference Finals, he's going to have to make. So that'd be great. I thought he had a really key stretch in the second quarter. Not that like the Pelicans were probably never going to make this in a game just because they scored 28 points in the first half, which we should say was the least the Knicks have allowed in the last 23 seasons, literally since 2001. So that was great. But if it was a normal team and they were going to make a run, like Jalen Brunson kind of just put his foot down. And I think so often we kind of take those stretches for granted. And it's just nice that like, I think for the first 4 years I did this podcast, I watched other teams had the guy that like when the Knicks were making a push to get back in a game, they just rip off 10 points in a row. And you're like, all right, guess we're not going to be in this game today. And Jalen did that. One of his best passes of the season, like a nasty drop off to Mikal Bridges. And what's kind of becoming a signature for him, like it's almost his version of the Nash dribble, where instead of cutting under the rim, like he goes middle across like 8 feet out from the rim and just throws like this pocket pass parallel to the sideline and can hit cutters that way. Like that was brilliant. Had a pick and roll with Cat where he's just getting the timing on how to manipulate the drop defender like down to a T, where like Missy was there on Cat, and Brunson just threw in this extra in and out, and it froze him for just a second, and then it opened up the lob to Towns. And it's the stuff you see from the best passers in basketball, right? Like the Rondos, the Chris Pauls, the Trae Youngs, and the fact that Brunson had that in his bag now, I think is a big part of the reason why you're seeing Cat like have all these really efficient games rolling to the rim.
Yeah, Brunson has really found the right kind of combination, I guess, of playmaking and scoring. I think he's played with the right mentality over the past, like, I want to say week, maybe 2 weeks, give or take. And I think that's huge because I think in the beginning of the season when his play was a little subpar, I guess, for his standard that he set last season, I think it's just that he was kind of getting used to knowing when to pick his spots. And I think now he knows when. Like you mentioned that second quarter, like that was a moment where the Knicks needed him to get a bucket or two. And he did just that. And I think that like when he is aggressive, taking like pull up threes and stuff like that, like I think it just opens up the floor so much. And you mentioned the passing to like Bridges, the cuts. I think he's really getting a feel for his teammates now, understanding where guys are going to be. And it's really nice. I feel like these past couple games, he and Hart to an extent have kind of been looking for Bridges a little more extra, trying to get him going. Trying to like instill a little bit of confidence in him. Like, no, we're looking for you. Keep shooting. And I think that's huge as well. And obviously Bridges scored 30, so maybe it is working. Maybe it's helping. But yeah, I just thought like the numbers aren't going to say it, but I thought he played a great game. Like he did exactly what was needed of him tonight.
Yeah, the efficiency now in the season, 49% from the field, 41% from three. 84% from the foul line. He has been an all NBA caliber player for the second year in a row. What do you think about Deuce? Because like it was obviously just a short stretch, but like in what was already a great first quarter, like he just comes on and puts like a giant exclamation point on it. And basically like had the Pelicans like playing garbage time in the second quarter, like a super deep three, then another one from the right wing, him and Campaign developing really good chemistry, then a blow by on Brandon Boston Jr., acrobatic up and under finish around Tice, 8 straight 10 the first quarter, and in some fashions end the game right there.
He's become like so steady and reliable. Like you just kind of know what you're gonna get from him night to night. And I think me personally, I've kind of taken it a little slightly for granted, just knowing that like he wasn't this like even a year ago from this time. Like he's just come so far in such a short time. And like watching him, I think that he's I mean, I think going into the season we all expected him to be like a significant portion of the team. But I don't think many people thought he'd be like one of the 5 best Knicks this season. And I think he has been that when he's been healthy. And I think that his defense is very important because with not to talk about Bridges again, but with his struggles defensively, he's become like their only real reliable, consistent point of attack defender, and that's why I think that like it was big for him to close that game out against Charlotte. And I think that he just brings so much in terms of like spacing, and I love when he plays alongside Brunson because it gives Brunson another ball handler. And I think it's also big when he plays alongside Payne because those two kind of mesh well. Their games complement each other really well, their skill sets.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it against the Hornets. I think they set each other up for a combined 3 threes. Payne just continues to shoot the lights out, 2 for 4 from 3 in this game. He is, I'm going to pull it up right now, I'm guessing like 45% from 3 on the season. He's at 43.5% from 3 this season. He's been great. One final Deuce number. I saw this Basketball Index post these really great tracking tweets, and he is second in the NBA right now in, I want to say I'm gonna forget it in real time. I want to say it was like on ball, like screen navigation defense was the way they said. Top 10 in ball screen navigation is how they phrase it. He's behind only Amen Thompson, who is just like a one-of-one athlete in screen navigation this year. That was the area where Mikal was supposed to be great. If Mikal could pick it up, and you have Deuce, like that is an avenue. If the Knicks decide to keep Mitchell Robinson, you can put out just like some total lockdown lineups and hopefully still have enough offense like in like limited bursts in the playoffs. But you pair Deuce, Mitch, OG, Mikal, Hart, like something like that. Like I would really be excited to see. Even just like I hope we get 10 minutes of that this season. Like it would be a joy. All right, before we wrap up here, I'm curious your thoughts on the Orlando matchup, a team that has been playing as well defensively as any team in basketball. Everyone expected them to fall apart when Paolo Banchero went out. Instead, they are 9-1 in their last 10 games. Franz Wagner has like bloomed into a superstar in front of our eyes. I think something like 28 points per over that last 10. Maybe like the best defensive personnel in the league. The Celtics could have a case. The Thunder could have a case, but they are scary on that end of the floor. And I'm really excited to see, after I thought Dallas like kind of beat up the Knicks and like shocked them with their physicality. And we saw Boston do that in some ways on opening night. I'm really excited to see the Knicks get another chance against a great defense like that, especially coming off a game like this from Mikal.
Same. I think it's going to be a real fun matchup and a good little mini test for the Knicks to see exactly where they're at. I wonder how aggressive Orlando will be in switching because they do kind of have the personnel to do some switching. But I think that they've been playing so well. You said 9-1 in their last 10, which is insane considering Paolo's hurt. But I think that they have a lot of bodies to throw at the Knicks. They have 3 bigs who are all reasonably capable of playing 25 minutes. Mo Wagner, they have Goga, and they have Wendell, who's healthy again. And then their backcourt defensively is one of the best in the league with KCP and Suggs. So it's gonna be a good test of like styles clashing in a sense where the Knicks are this high-powered offense and Orlando likes to muck it up. They like to play this really gritty defensive style. So I'm really excited to see it. I'm sure OG will get the matchup on Franz, and it's going to be a fun one, and it's for the cup as well to get into the qualifying round.
Right, and we all care about the cup. I don't personally, but it is fun and it'll add some drama. I think the one thing you can say about the cup is players seem to care about it. Matt Ryan has to put it in his investment portfolio apparently, so hopefully the Knicks get it done for Matt Ryan's investment portfolio. But Ariel Pacheco, you can check him out on X at @Pacheco NBA, one of the best doing it. Thanks for joining me, buddy. This was a blast.
Thanks for having me on. It's nice to be on after a win.
All right, cool. We'll be back tomorrow with Philip Rossman-Reich of Locked On Magic for an even deeper dive on that big-time matchup. Until then, we'll talk to you soon on Locked On Knicks.